So today I am getting into the topic of the Constitution for um, for the UK. Now, this is something that I'm interested in because I've been asking questions about this for quite a long time. If England and the UK actually does have a constitution. In the last episode, I was discussing the constitution. Well, it's not actually a constitution that we were talking about. I found out there is a constitution for Canada, but there's also a constitution that's separate from the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom. So maybe at some later time I can go over that, but I did find out that there is a constitution that's supposed to be separate from that charter. So I just found that out last night too, by the way. Right now, though, we are moving into the Constitution of the United Kingdom, and I will get that started and ready to go. At the moment, I'll be doing it on my own, which is fine. I had Jitsi as well as Discord set up, and nobody showed up, so what it comes down to is the show must go on. We got to keep this stuff moving, so that's what I'm doing, and this is where we're going. So it's not like I haven't had to do a stream before on my own, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, the Constitution of the United Kingdom comprises the written and unwritten arrangements that establish the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland as a political body. Unlike in most countries, no official attempt has been made to codify such arrangements into a single document. Thus, it is known as the uncodified Constitution. This enables the Constitution to be easily changed, as no provisions are formally entrenched. Provisions are formally entrenched. Now, this is what I was talking about with the United Kingdom and England's Constitution compared to the Constitution here in the United States. Here in the United States, our Constitution is basically written in stone. There's no way of changing it unless we have what is referred to as an Article 5 convention. And I believe 3/4 of the states has to agree to do a Article 5 convention. And when you have these conventions, it can't be a broad topic, so you can't go in there and change like a whole bunch of things. It has to be specific to one situation or one topic, and that's how they do it. So in order to make like all of these huge changes to the Constitution, you would have to have more than one constitutional convention, and that is that's a hard task to do. Now, plus you also have to go from state to state and get each of these states to agree that they feel that we need an Article 5 convention for that specific subject. Whereas in England and in most countries that are ran by the United Kingdom, people can just go in and they can change their constitutions at a moment's notice on a whim. And I really believe that that's important for people to understand, because that's what makes the Constitution here in the United States more unique, in my opinion, because we're not allowed to do that. And I think politically that's what's really important, is people shouldn't be able to just go in and change constitutional laws whenever they see fit, to change to the fad, what's popular for that time. I think that it really needs to be thought through. And here in the United States, everybody's starting to get more on that progressive stance, where they think that we need to make changes and we need them now. Well, I'm not for that. I think that frickin' when we pass laws, there needs to be time to discuss the situation, and it shouldn't be passed in Congress just at a moment's notice. You know what I mean? Put the bill in front of of Congress and then have it passed within a month. I don't agree with that. I think it should take time. People should think about what they actually pass as laws in today's time, because things are moving way too fast in the first place. So we need to really take our time and really pay attention to what it is that we're passing into law. And that's something that I really have been bringing up lately whenever we do have this stream, So now that I've covered that, I'm going to go to the UK Supreme Court. The UK Supreme Court recognizes a number of constitutional principles, including parliamentary sovereignty, the rule of law, democracy, and upholding international law. It also recognizes that some acts of Parliament have special constitutional status. These include now called Parliament to represent the people, to hold courts in a fixed place, to guarantee fair trials, to guarantee free movement of people, to free the church from the state. Here in the United States we call that separation of church and state, and to guarantee rights of common people to use the land. After the Glorious Revolution, the Bill of Rights of 1689 and the Claim of Right Act in 1689 cemented Parliament's position as the supreme lawmaking body, and said that the election of members of Parliament ought to be free. The Treaty of Union in 1706 and the Act of Union in 1707, Kingdoms of England, Wales, and Scotland. The Acts of Union 1800 joined Ireland, but the Irish Free State separated after the Anglo-Irish Treaty in 1922, leaving Northern Ireland within the UK. After struggling for universal suffrage, the UK guaranteed every adult citizen over 21 years the equal right to vote in the representation of the people, equal franchise. At 1920, hold up, let me read that right. Okay. The UK guaranteed every adult citizen over 21 years the equal right to vote in the representation of the people, Equal Franchise Act of 1928. There we go. After World War II, the UK became a founding member of the Council of Europe to uphold human rights and the United Nations to guarantee international peace and security. The UK was a member of the European Union, joining its predecessor in 1973, but left in 2020. The UK is also a founding member of the International Labour Organization and the World Trade Organization to participate in Kingdom's Constitution, to participate in regulating the global economy. So right here is where we start getting into the nitty-gritties when it comes to the UK and socialism and how entrenched they are in socialism. A lot of people don't like to look at that. They like to think that socialism has been dead, since the fall of the USSR, but that isn't just socialism. That's that's communism, and to be more precise, it's what they call vulgar communism. Marx did write the Communist Manifesto, but he also was responsible for socialism being created to him and various other people. There's different kinds of socialism, and today it's hard for me when it comes to England to determine if English conservatism is actually conservatism, or if it's actually socialism through nationalist socialist ideologies, because they're really, really close. When you look at the traditional conservatism in the UK, you find out how harsh they were compared to what we consider conservatism here in the United States. And if you really take a look at it, you find a lot of similarities to classical conservatism in the UK and National Socialism, which I believe is a big issue now when it comes to these conservative groups, because it seems to me like they're being overran by white nationalist parties who are pretending to be conservative, but in reality they're not. They're actually socialists in sheep's clothing, basically. But yeah, whenever I read this and it says that the UK was the founding members of the International Labour Organization and the World Trade Organization, that's when I start realizing that they were some of the first people to push the socialist agenda, which was actually started in France, Germany, and England, and other countries that were in Europe, not just the Soviet Union. And it really kind of brings it home to me. So now the leading institutions in the United Kingdom's constitution are Parliament, the judiciary, and the executive, and executives of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Parliament is the supreme lawmaking body and represents the people of the United Kingdom. The House of Commons is elected by a democratic vote in the country's 650 constituencies. The House of Lords is mostly appointed by cross-political party groups from the House of Commons and can delay but not block legislation from the Commons. To make a new act of Parliament the highest form of law, both houses must read, amend, or approve proposed legislation 3 times, and the monarch must give consent. Now, right there is where we get into a lot of what Mark has been talking about, when it comes to the monarch and them going against or not giving consent to stuff that's in the legislation. He pretty much says they don't really go against it. So you have basically the monarch caving into legislation and becoming a puppet. And from what I see, when it comes to the monarch would be the equivalent of what we have here in the United States as a president. So the executive I should say the executive branch instead of the president, but the executive branch would be the equivalent of what the monarch is in England from my point of view. At least that's the way it sounds when I read through this stuff and get it. And then you have the House of Lords, that would be equivalent to the Senate. And then you have the you have the lower, what is it again, the lower, both houses, the lower house or whatever it is. But that would be equivalent to the House of Commons. That's it. The House of Commons would be equivalent to the House of Representatives here in the United States. Now, the judiciary interprets the law found in acts of Parliament and develops the law established by previous cases. Now, the highest court is the 12-person Supreme Court, as it decides appeals from the courts of appeal in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, or the Court of Session in Scotland. Now, UK courts cannot decide that acts of Parliament are unconstitutional or invalidate them, but can declare that they are incompatible with the European Convention of Human Rights. So see right here we have this connection to the rest of Europe, you know what I mean, through their Supreme Court. And they can't change or invalidate the laws that their parliament comes up with, but they can say that they go against these laws that involve the European Convention of Human Rights. They can determine whether the acts of the executive are lawful. The executive is led by the Prime Minister. So actually right there, that would be the executive branch for the Parliament. So the monarchy would be a wild card, basically. That's interesting. So, because the Prime Minister would be the executive, yeah. So they can determine whether the acts of the executive are lawful. The executive is led by the Prime Minister, who must maintain the confidence of the majority of the members of Parliament. The Prime Minister appoints the cabinet of servants, such as the Department of Health and Social Care, which runs the National Health Service, or the Department of Education, which funds schools and universities. And these kind of organizations is what I'm talking about, that I feel are just nothing but socialism run amok. It's social care and national health services, things of that nature. That's kind of what I was getting into in my discussions, about UK, the UK and their policies. It's all about socialism and creating departments for the Department of Education and National Health Services and stuff of that nature. So, and you see it here in the United States too, but a lot of this was not originally here in the United States. It was introduced because of our friendships with other countries, you know what I mean, basically. So with that, I am going to continue on. Now I want to get into the monarch. Now the monarch, in their public capacity, known as the crown, embodies the state. Laws can only be made by or with the authority of the crown in Parliament. all judges sit in place of the crown, and all ministers act in the name of the crown. The monarch is, for the most part, a ceremonial figurehead, and has not refused assent from any new law since the Scottish Militia Bill in 1708. So yeah, right there it goes over what I was talking about that Mark was discussing, and that's been since 1708. Now the monarch is bound by constitutional convention. Constitutional convention is what I was talking about earlier with an Article 5 convention. Most constitutional questions arise in judicial review applications to decide whether the decision or act of public bodies are lawful. Every public body can only act in accordance with the law laid down in acts of Parliament and the decision of the courts. Under the Human Rights Act of 1998, courts may review government actions to decide whether the government has followed the statutory obligation of all public authorities to comply with the European Convention on Human Rights. Convention rights include everyone's right to life, liberty against arbitrary arrest or detention, torture, enforced labor or slavery, to a fair trial, to privacy against unlawful surveillance, to freedom of expression, conscience, and religion, to respect for private life, to freedom of association, including joining trade unions, and to freedom of assembly and protest, which all sounds good in the making, but it, in my opinion, it really isn't coming to perdition, you know what I'm saying? So I from reviewing a lot of this stuff, it just kind of it doesn't seem to be really a valid argument or anything. So with that being read, I can probably get something. I got a message just now from Mark, and I can get him up in here. He can talk about some of this, and we can see what he's wanting to say. At least I got the reading done, and we can get it started. I'm gonna set up Skype and have him come in, and we can do it on Skype. So if he wants to come in, we can talk about it. You know, because we've got 25 minutes into it and everything. Now, the one thing that I noticed was that whenever they talk about the monarch, for the most part, is a ceremonial figurehead and has not refused assent to any new laws since the Scottish Militia Bill of 1708. Now, I'd like to kind of dig into this Scottish Militia Bill. I think that would probably be a pretty good topic to talk about, because even here in the United States, we depended on our militia back whenever our country first started. It was our militia that actually won the war against England. So it'd be interesting to read that and see how much that has to offer. I've already gone over a lot of the stuff that I've read that I consider, that I think concerns socialism, and I really don't like the whole idea of constitutions being, changed at a moment's notice or on a whim, according to according to hip new ideas that are just coming into government, because people don't think that law should be there. Constitutional principles are very important, especially when it comes to freaking sovereignty and the rule of law. So when it's written down, it needs to be written down and it needs to be upheld. Another thing is a big hot topic too is the separation of church and state. Like a lot of people have a hard time with that concept of the separation of church and state, even here in the United States. And that's one thing that I think would be pretty interesting to go over and talk about as well. Now, when it comes to conservatism, on the last episode I also said that I think that I also said that I think that there is a difference between what we think conservatism is here in the United States and what it really is. And the reason why is because our country, I feel, was it was established more on a classical liberal concept with John Locke and the liberalism. And I've been kind of curious too in what we were talking about previously when I mentioned the radicals and here recently too I started playing a game called Assassin's Creed Unity, and it was really weird because we had just started talking about protectionism and radicalism, and then the conservatives too. So yeah, here he is. Can you talk? Is your audio fine? But yeah, we oh no. Yeah, your audio's out, Mark. And see, that's what I was saying the other day. We actually took care of that yesterday. So it's really good. Hold on a minute. But yeah, yeah, it's. Can you say anything? Or are you? Yeah. But yeah, we were talking about the radicals, and I actually started checking them out, and it's something that I think that it's a path to go down to too when it comes to actually European, all of Europe. You know what I mean? Like they're the whole concept of radicalism and how it actually brought about change in Europe, because that's something that I've really never paid attention to. It's something new to me, which I think I should explore and maybe bring that up. I went over it a little bit last week. It says the radicals were a loose parliamentary political grouping in Great Britain and Ireland in the early to mid 19th century. Now on this topic, I was talking about wanting to do another subject and start talking about radicalism and how that came about. So okay. And so when it comes to what I've been reading here, man, I'd like your take on this. Now, do you think that maybe, first of all, in the next episode, we should talk about the radicalism and radicals in England? Because that actually is something I think I probably overlooked on that. It sounds like it would be an interesting topic. So, and with also another thing that I did notice too is I was wrong about the the crown being the equivalent of the executive branch. Apparently, the prime minister is the equivalent of the executive branch here in the United States. So I would be thinking that the king or the crown would actually be like a wild card, what we would call a wild card here in the United States. Where, well, especially in sports, they call it a wild card. They have that party that has the ability to go against laws, but it's even written in here. The crown rarely has never done it, I guess, since the 1700s. So we confirm that you do know what you're talking about, Mark Edworthy. Um, what do you think about the whole thing about the radicalism and stuff? I think that's something that we should be discussing too when it comes to moving into the liberal part of England, like liberalism. From what I'm getting, the radicals were in opposition to the conservatives in not only England but in France as well, and they were like they would be the ones who actually had the Lockean, philosophy and stuff of freedom of speech and
Northern Ireland is, if you have a look at the issues in relation to trade at the moment, Northern Ireland has become a sort of vassal state.
yeah.
Either way. And there are issues with the EU's let's call it dictatorship of Northern Ireland in relation to the Good Friday Agreement.
No, see, that's what's strange to me is like they're actually supposed to. Northern Ireland is actually supposed to be a part of England still, of the UK.
Yeah.
And Southern Ireland is supposed to be free Ireland. You know what I mean? So
yeah, the Republic of
And what's going on?
And what's happening at the moment is, let's say there's been some alleged underhanding dealings with between the UK's civil service and the European Commission. European Union still, if the UK still got full control or full autonomy over Northern Ireland.
That is a good question. I mean, that's a really, really good question if you stop and think about it.
It's a seriously important question. After all, if the Good Friday Agreement stops the 30-year so-called troubles in Northern Ireland, it in effect halted the civil war between the so-called civil war between UK and the rest of the UK and Northern Ireland.
Now, that right there is actually a good thing because I was just discussing that. I went over all the stuff discussing how horrible you guys are and shit. I've covered that, which I was going to do. Because,
Well, in this case, it's I personally put the blame down to our civil service, our weak leadership of not only this government but subsequent governments since major really since the ending of Thatcherism back in 91.
Yeah. Now there's something that
Blairism has done major damage.
There's something that's much older that I'm kind of curious about because this stuck out to me. Do you know anything about the Scottish Militia Bill?
isn't that related to the Jacobite movement of the ending of the Jacobite movement in the 18th century? Or 18th century? Yeah, 18th century.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in 1708. I pulled that up and I thought that was, or I didn't pull it up. It's in my notes and everything, and I thought that was pretty interesting. It stuck out to me. I didn't recognize it before, but whenever I frickin' ran across it, I was like, that's kind of interesting. Now, what they call it, I just pulled it up now. They call it the Scottish Militia Bill of 1708, known formally as the Scottish Militia Bill. And it was a bill.
So is that before, if it's 1708, is that before the Jacobite movement?
Let me read this real quick. Okay, it was a bill that was passed by the House of Commons and the House of Lords of the Parliament of Great Britain in early 1708. However, on March the 11th, 1708, Queen Anne withheld royal assent on the advice of her ministers for fear that the proposed militia would be disloyal. This was due to the sudden appearance of Franco-Jacobite invasion fleet, Franco-Jacobite invasion fleet en route to Scotland, which gave ministers second thoughts at the last minute about allowing it to reach the status books as of about allowing it to reach the statute books. As of 2024, it is the last occasion of which the royal veto has been used in Great Britain or the United States.
Okay, so I just checked. The Jacobite uprising was in 1745, so you're talking about several years later. But I know that I thought it was Spain more than France, but it could well be France. But I know that there was a Scottish Franco-Scottish agreement back earlier, so back in the later 17th century.
Mm-hmm. No, this would be before Queen Anne lost her head.
Yeah.
So, and
yeah, this was during the sort of Protestant Anglo argument. Around Shakespeare's time.
It does bring into argument, though. It does bring into argument, though, the true ascension or descent of the royal family as well. Because like Queen Anne was actually the legitimate frickin' person who is supposed to take the crown. You know what I mean? And Queen Elizabeth was illegitimate. So if you really look at it that way, you know what I mean? Henry VIII, I believe, wasn't Queen Anne from his first wife?
Yeah, I've got to remember. It's been a long time since I did any study of this.
Wait, actually, no. James is actually a descendant from Queen Anne's lineage, if I'm correct. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah,
I think.
Charles Stewart. I thought Charles was in 1745. Yeah, I've got to remind myself of this side. I've got to remind myself.
Mm-hmm. That's what stuck out to me, and it was kind of cool because we were talking about discussing the Jacobite invasion and stuff, and I think that's actually pretty important to discuss too, because that did influence politics back then, and
it's made a Yeah. When was the Act of Union signed between Scotland and England?
Oh God, I think I went over that too, but I know that it that's a pretty interesting thing too because it's you've heard of the Stone of Scones, right? Huh? Oh, you're taking a smoke break. I see. Either that or your video froze up on it. Well, the Stone of Scones is actually from Scotland, and it's shipped
Yeah.
south. It was shipped south and put underneath the throne. So whenever the king or the queen is inaugurated, they have to sit on that throne for inauguration. If you notice down underneath, there's a stone there.
Yeah. There was a lovely search out for our next
Episode.
stream, but there is a extremely good YouTube Scottish Caribbean historian that looks at the history of Scotland and England.
Yeah. Well, I think that it should be discussed too about their relationship because um, I was one of those guys that got freaking hooked on that one movie with what's his face what was it
Or Braveheart.
Braveheart. Okay, and when
Mel Gibson.
I did love that movie, to be honest with you. But when I went in and I fact checked and I did a deep dive of it, I found out that people really don't know what happened there. You know what I mean? It was like freaking.
Yeah.
It's more myth than it is actually real. So I think it would be kind of cool to kind of go into it and discuss that because like there's a lot of facts. Now, don't get me wrong, the king during that time, he was a horrible man. You know what I mean? He killed his own son. That's fact. He did kill his own son because he was homosexual. But,
That's conjecture.
well,
You're gonna have to do some research. Send me a couple of notes over the next week at some point, and I'll have a look at it and mine
yeah, we're gonna have to work out that mic too, cause your your mic is really messing up bad. Not right now. Don't.
Okay, I'm having.
Don't. I mean,
Okay.
not like
I'm
right.
having
Not right.
various problems. Okay, I'm having various problems with Skype and other things at the moment, but yeah,
And
over the last day it's just been weird.
I mean, if nothing else, we can start doing pre-recordings. You know what I mean? So when we do this, so that
Yeah,
we can
yeah,
do a good broadcast and everything. I know a lot of guys that we talk to have a problem with that, but there's really nothing wrong with it if that's what we have to do to get good episodes. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. It might. I think streaming this series is a bit nonsensical.
Yeah, it's getting pretty bad when it's getting pretty bad whenever we get on here to do a serious show and all of a sudden we're having mic issues. You know what I mean? People, and
Indeed,
I,
indeed.
I think I actually had a good proportion of the stuff that I was reviewing to you muted, so we 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 do have some of that I gotta edit out for whenever I upload it, but that's on me, you know. Now,
Yeah.
there's also something I wanted to go over with you. Is something that I found out about Canada. Um, I found out that they do have the freaking the British or the 1982 charter that I mentioned in the last episode, but last night I pulled it up for Jeffy's show, and I found out that there's actually a constitution for Canada that's separate from the charter. I didn't realize that until
Yeah, I thought
last
there was.
night.
I thought there was. So I thought when you were talking about it last time, there was some extra.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I think it would be cool to go over that if I can find any more information about it, because I mean we've been talking about the Constitution for Britain for quite some time, so I would rather freaking stay focused on this more than anything else. You know what I mean? We can get into the conversation about John Locke and liberalism too, but I really think that those are some important aspects to get, because I don't think too many people have knowledge about England and the UK's constitution. You know.
And then we can push into how it's how things like the 1869 Bill of Rights and that sort of thing influenced the US.
Well, I would. Well, see, the 1816 Bill of Rights, I think, came after or the United States Revolution.
Yeah, but a lot of this, there's a lot of lead off, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, throw some examples out there.
A lot of the US concepts, legal concepts, spun out of UK's English concepts.
Well, I know, like the Bill of Rights was important when it came to England, and like when the United States became independent.
Sorry, yeah, it's 60. I said 1869 earlier. I meant 1689.
Yeah.
But it was before the writing of the actual American Constitution.
Yeah, we were still colony back then, but now.
Funny enough, it's just gone. Actually, it's only gone enough hour before July the 4th.
Yep.
It's 11 UTC. 11 o'clock UTC now. So yeah, and now it's time you'll be celebrating 4th of July.
Yeah, but how do you guys celebrate the 4th of July? That's the big question.
We don't know why. Well, majority of Brits don't.
You guys should be celebrating. You know what I mean? It's like freaking. You should be like, oh yes, we lost that war. Thank goodness.
Thank you. One of the very few wars that the US has actually won.
Well, it's one of the very few wars that the English has lost.
The US at the time.
It was.
And it was leaving the US.
It was one of the. Yeah, but get this, it was one of the few wars that the English had lost, and they're grateful for it every day now, because they have to watch all the news of what's going on in the United States, and they're like, oh, thank God.
Well, yeah, actually. Actually, no, we have still got a large influence on this international stage.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at. Now, I already brought up the whole dirty scoundrel thing. I already know how you guys influenced a lot of stuff. Like, and I mean, at the end, like, we'll have like a review on a lot of this stuff, and I'll kind of go over that stuff. But I'm really, to be honest, amazed with doing this, because there's a lot of things that I wasn't even aware of. It's just like I was talking about the radical party that you guys had. That's actually something I really think that we do need to go over, because the radicalism, it stems even from France as well as England.
Yeah, the revolution.
Yeah, I think that would be something that would be interesting to talk about. And conservative, from what I'm seeing, like your guys' classical conservatism was really, really hard. You know what I mean? It was really, really intrinsic, and that's why I was saying I really think that like your conservative party today is being overran by frickin' the Nationalist Socialist Party pretending to be conservative.
I actually, if you making that sort of distinction, I disagree. I would say that the Labour Party is being pushed more to, or has been pushed more to, the sort of cultural Marxist viewpoint.
No, I'm talking
more
about
than the more national socialism, fascist viewpoint.
no, I'm talking about your conservative party.
No, our Conservative Party, mainly due to academia and civil service, and well, academia, is more been pushed in the last 15, 20 years further into sort of cultural Marxism.
Yeah, you see, that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm starting to see.
With the left wing.
Yeah. And I've always you're the one that disagrees with me about that. Remember, I've always considered National Socialists as being left wing and right wing.
Yeah. This is why I don't like the national left and right, because National Socialism. Say that to any college students these days, then they will think of Hitler and the far right.
Right.
The far right.
Yeah, they can.
Well, but that's.
Well, I consider it far left in my personal opinion. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like I always have said. Left and right socialism is irrelevant. It's just
still
two sides of the same coin.
Right. Now, what I was saying though is like I was going over like this whole conservative thing when it comes to England, and like it's really hard to distinguish between freaking conservatism or classic conservatism is the way I should say it, and National Socialist, because they have almost identical kind of beliefs, except for conservatism is more aimed at actual values and heritage, and even in that aspect the National Socialists do the same thing. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Yeah, it looks at culture, but I was going to say National Socialism is a more ethno related, whereas classical liberalism is about
conservatism,
cultural rather than ethno.
National conservatism.
Yeah, it's more of a cultural sort of concept rather than ethno sort of.
Right. And like
more heavily. Yeah.
And one thing that I remember when we were going over it, it said that they believe that it should thrive naturally. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't derive.
It should be organic.
Yeah, organic. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a big difference too, because like the National Socialists don't believe in that. You know what I mean? Even though both
socialism full stop is all about control, isn't it? It's all about some
special interest groups.
May that be the workers, or may that be the party.
That's one thing that did stand out to me about the differences. But it's too fine of a line, because like when you hear these people talk, like you have to really pay a lot of attention. Like that video that you posted that you wanted me to check out, it sounded like these young guys were like conservative speaking, but then they got halfway into their
Well,
speech.
granted, life isn't as simple as either you this or that. Yeah, there isn't a finite line between
Yeah,
all
very.
political cultures.
Which also makes me think too, and this is something that I went over years ago, but it was about Winston Churchill. You know, Winston Churchill despised Adolf Hitler and Germany with a passion. And he even went as far as to say in an interview that it didn't matter who was running Germany, Adolf Hitler or just some freaking schmuck basically. They were going to go back to war eventually. He knew it, you know what I mean?
Well, he could see that Germany move, was taking more and more control of the countries, and like Lloyd, what's the previous prime minister, Lloyd George?
Yeah, yeah, that was him.
Yeah, and which was more of a Hitler appeaser. Um, the interesting thing is Lloyd George was, I think, was always a sort of molded politician,
Yeah,
a career politician, whereas Winston Churchill was came from a much more military background. There's actually a good film that was made in the 90s, I want to say, with this film, looking at the history of Winston Churchill. And Churchill served in things like the Boer War.
yeah,
And, it was actually a troop ground during the Boer War. So he had a lot of military background anyway before. Maybe he was quite old when he became prime minister
yeah. And
in his 60s or something.
that was something that stuck out with me when it came to a lot of that whenever it comes to Winston Churchill and the relationship with Germany, like you could see that there was that friction between England and Germany even after World War One. You know what I mean? Like it was two competitors. You know what I'm saying? Two king of the hills. There could only be one. You know what I mean? So it just
I'm just thinking, is Winston Churchill old enough to remember before Germany became a unified country?
the yeah
Because Germany became a unified country in 1887,
mm-hmm. Well,
something like that. And and Winston Churchill could well be fairly young at that time.
yeah, I believe he was because the Boer Wars. Well, no, he might have been around. He could have been because
Yeah,
if he
yeah.
because if he served in the Boer Wars, then yeah, there could be a good chance that he knew about all that. And now with Germany, they weren't called Germany at that time, were they? They were called the.
Well, it was a league. It was Germany, but at the time Germany was actually before the start of the 19th century. So I think 1790 or something. There was a emergence of various states, but I think there was before then there was something like 100 plus different states in what we now know as Germany, or provinces,
You know,
autonomous provinces.
now, now Germany itself was, as the name Germany was, Germany officially, the Federal Republic of Germany, the FRG, is a country in Central Europe. It is the most populous member state of the European Union. Germany. Well, okay, this is getting ridiculous. Now, it had the date and everything when
hang on. Just to Churchill
18.
was born in 1874,
Mm-hmm.
and the first unification of Germany after the Franco-Prussian War was in 1871.
Okay.
So yeah, Winston Churchill's early life he would have been aware of the creation of a unified Germany.
Right. Now, the formal unification, according to this, the unification of Germany into the modern nation state commenced on 18 August of 1866. So that's when it was formally recognized as the unification. So, and you said 1861?
Yeah, no, I said after the Prussian-Franco War.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a amalgamation of various states in after Napoleon.
Right. Now, 1871.
1802.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the thing that there's what we do call the first unification of Germany that happened in 1871, and
the German Empire
unification occurred in 1990 after the fall of the wall.
Right. And then 1871 was the German Empire. And then after World War One, and the German Revolution of 1918 or 1919, the empire was changed to the Weimar Republic. And after the Nazis seized power,
you've been getting this from Wikipedia, haven't you?
Yes.
Seized power when they were democratically elected.
Well, I mean, it's
the
Nazi seizure of power.
If you're talking about seized power, are we talking about the march on the white mark that put
it was
Hitler in prison?
1933. It was the
okay. So when they were democratically elected, not seized power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Nazi seizure of power in 1933 led to the establishment.
Democratically elected.
To the totalitarian dictatorship, World War II, and the Holocaust. After the end of it's Wikipedia. Now, see, I was against Wikipedia when I started all this shit, but then I went on and tried to frickin' do Britannica, and they're just as ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Actually, Wikipedia is a useful resource, but you've just got to be aware of the political leanings of the
right. Exactly. And I've been, I don't know what they're doing to Encyclopedia Britannica, but they should be ashamed of themselves because, when it comes to history...
I think I've noticed the Oxford English Dictionary, and especially the Collins Dictionary, has been going down this woke line, society-wide woke line for the last 5-6 years.
Yep. I went into Britannica within the last 2-3 years, and it blew my mind that they're starting to talk like that, and Britannica was important. It was very influential for hundreds of years now. I mean, this isn't like just some encyclopedia. I mean, it influenced the world. We wouldn't have the world we have today if it wasn't for the Encyclopedia Britannica, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. It created these revolutions that all these European countries are so proud of.
I'm not sure if they created the revolutions.
Who do you think was
Created this
spreading?
bit of a storm.
Who do you think was
Yeah, but
spreading the
yeah.
information?
As I've said in past, the Gutenberg press is the biggest the greatest invention since sliced bread.
Right.
If it wasn't for the Gutenberg press, the Bible wouldn't have been translated. We would be living a completely different sort of culture.
Well, we'll forgive
The
him for
West
that.
itself would be living in a completely different culture if it wasn't. You could argue that the internet is the modern Gutenberg press, not because it allows just well, it's because of the spread of the of information being
Exactly.
or being just the spread of information and the access to the information. So the internet is the modern Gutenberg press.
Okay, now we've actually, I think, gotten enough to where we could actually be cool with this podcast, or this broadcast, I should say. We've gotten it up to about an hour and 23, and that takes the exception off of the bad situation we had with all of the technical issues. So we've come to like an hour and 24 minutes. So before we end, I want you to tell me what your thoughts are when it comes to the stuff that we've gone over. And I also want you to admit publicly that the English are horrible, rotten citizens of the world, and they should be exposed for their rotten and evil ways.
The English brought things like aided in the spread of things like modern medicine towards the world. We brought to the world a concept of a concept of fair justice. We brought to the world cricket.
Oh God! Is that the best you got is cricket?
To the world, tea.
Oh yeah.
India did, but we aided in spread of tea throughout the world.
That's right. But cricket, seriously? I mean, of all the sports you guys have, the best thing you could come up with was cricket? Really?
Well, we did create football society for the Americans and the soccer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also...
Before us, there would be no soccer.
No, I also want to point out to people, too, since you're over there in England, the person who created football, soccer, here in the United States, is also buried in an abandoned graveyard. So if you guys are soccer or football fans, however you pronounce it, it'd probably be best to figure out where he's buried at. Go out there and try to get people to renovate and restore that grave, because I found that out about 3 years ago, and every chance I get, I always want to mention that on my streams. So if you guys care about that sport, then that would be something to look into. And
when you say created football, what?
He was the founder. He's the one that came up with the game.
I think the game in one form or another has been around for centuries.
Well, we should discuss that then. That'd be a good topic to talk about, because.
Okay, I'm not a soccer fan at all, but it's a mystery.
Well, your guys' games actually is something that I'd like to come up with, some kind of stream of somehow, pull it together somehow, because like you guys are in England, you have a lot of different values and traditions that go from town to town. You know what I mean? Like everything in England's not exactly the same like everybody thinks it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of cultural diversity in UK.
Yeah.
not sure now, but yeah.
I think we should come up with something later on that would talk about that, because I think that would be pretty cool. And
Okay.
so with that, I think we should end this, and we'll come back later to talk a little bit more. All right.
Mm.
All right. So let me end this, and I hope you guys